Welcome to Taste Buds. I'm Debra Eckerling, goal strategist, writer, and foodie, and today I'm speaking with Daniel Shemtob, chef, restaurateur, and co-founder of Snibbs. Welcome, Daniel.
Hi, thanks for having me, Deb.
Well, thank you for being here. What inspired your love of cooking?
I think growing up in a Middle Eastern household, so we're Iranian Jews, and I think just growing up in that house, food was a big part of the conversation. When you think about the family get-togethers, you think about who's making what and what are we eating, and it definitely helped that I have a heavily obese father. So we just all had a very big passion for food, and I remember at my earliest days, my dad got a meal he didn't like, and he just wouldn't eat it. And so here's this guy who definitely has an appetite, and given the opportunity, said no because it wasn't to his liking. And so I think that level of discernment around food and that level of care that my mom used to put into making just some of the best food I've ever had, really kind of started the passion at an early age.
How did that passion translate into cooking?
This is the perfect platform to share the story. Okay, so I used to cook when I was little. I love making soups. I still love making soups. I don't know, something about soup for me is just perfect. But when I was little, it was Passover, and I was really hungry, and I was like, "Oh, what do I want to eat?" And I was looking in the fridge, and I was like, "Oh, maybe I'll make this like matzo pizza." And so I take some matzah, some tomato sauce, put some olives, some cheese, some mushrooms on it. And so I go to about to eat it, and my dad's like, "Hey, what's that?" And I was like, "Oh, it's matzo pizza." And I think I was like maybe 7 years old, 6 years old. And he's like, "That looks really good. Let me have a bite." And he's like, "I want one." And then my brother was like, "Oh no, I want one." And then my mom was like, "I want one." And so one of my first memories of cooking was making matzo pizza for the family. And I think seeing their excitement and seeing that I pleased this household of foodies. On one of my first tries, I don't know if they were just humoring me, but I think they liked it. And so that was when it finally became tangible.
Got it. And I have to tell you, soup is that was my gateway to cooking because I am a
Yeah.
reformed non-cook. But soup is so easy, and you put ingredients, and then you do things, and then you have soup. I mean, what better thing, right?
Everyone should be having soup. When people ask me what my favorite food is, and it's a very tough question to answer, I've actually come to a realization that it's broth. So I don't care if it comes with Asian noodles, if it comes with matzo ball, if it comes with, anything out there. As long as I'm getting broth, I'm a very happy human. And so I've learned that even though it's quite complex and very detailed, broth is my favorite food.
So
Mhm.
this love and all this positive reinforcement for your matzo pizza. So you went from there to the lime truck. You have the truck, you've got the restaurants, but now you're doing a shoe thing. So
Yes.
help me leap from lime truck to restaurants to shoes.
Yeah. So I'll give you a very abridged story here. So at 20 years old, a week before my 21st birthday, I decided to start the Lime Truck. So the Lime Truck is the food truck that won the Great Food Truck Race, and it really has been a platform for me to be able to do everything that I've been able to accomplish today. And so start the Lime Truck. We were so inconsistent and so not professional that we couldn't make the same menu twice. And so we used it as a strength, and we did a brand new menu every day on the food truck, which was pretty prolific at the time. And we would do dishes from $3 to $100. And that led us to win the best new restaurant, which was the only food truck ever to have won that, and the top 25 restaurants in Orange County by OC Register and OC Weekly. And so we knew we were onto something, and that there was a deep seated passion for food. And so now it was about rounding out. And that's when we opened our first fast casual restaurant, TLT, and that was in Westwood. And then from there, I had a knack for fast casual, for food trucks, and I wanted to try California fine dining, so casual fine dining. And that's when I opened Hatch. And in that process, really sad story, I had a very bad slip and fall in the kitchen. So it was about 2 weeks before an opening in downtown LA. And I turned the corner and I had the slip and fall. I herniate and slip my L5 and L4 disc, which is pretty much the lowest part of your vertebrae. And I'm out cold. I'm 23, 24 years old, and I'm watching someone else open my line, which as a chef is a very difficult thing to do because how you set the tone for the kitchen is kind of how the kitchen will live on far beyond you. And so I went down this rabbit hole. Why isn't anyone making good footwear? Why isn't there anything that actually speaks to the worker, to the chef? And I knew I could make it look cool, but I wanted to make it good for you, which is why I partnered with Dr. Snibbe, who I named the company after. And so there was an element of making it good for you and making you feel good in the footwear.
So you created something you needed, and now it's helping like tons of people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Well, is that not the definition of disruption? I mean, we're Californians. We know this word. We say this word a lot. But you're it's sort of like I'm not just a spokesperson. I use the stuff, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
what is it that about the shoes that make a difference?
So I think it's important to know the process to understand how we got here. And so it was 5 years of both me. We have a third partner who's also a restaurateur, who's my high school best friend, and Dr. Snibbe. And when you think about an orthopedic surgeon, they're over a gurney or over a operating table, and they're standing on their feet for 8, 10, 12, 16 hours a day around liquids and things like that. Chef, same environment. Restaurateur, a little bit more movement, but still in their kitchens and out of their kitchens. And so it took us 5 years to make the shoe. We had three separate groups of consultants from Nike, Jordan, Adidas, like people that were high up there. We had two different factories, two trips to China to make this shoe that we're really proud of. And so I think the element um, of perfecting the product is the reason why we've done so well. And we've just been product obsessed since the get-go. And because we're the actual people using the product, as you said, like we're solving our own problem, we have a real life application. And so I think that gives you an edge when you're creating something.
The restaurant business and the shoe creation business. Obviously, one thing you eat and the other thing you walk on. So we've got that differentiation. But in terms
Sure.
of creation, what are the similarities and differences?
That's a great question. Um, as far as the creation process, food, it took me about 2 to 3 years to write the menu for Hatch. So it was a labor of love. And there was a lot of making small changes. Like I made 100 different tares, which is the master sauce that you use in yakitori. And so, and we landed on the third recipe and just kind of tightened it up a little bit and how we did it. And so I think there was that kind of same mentality where you start with a product and then you just reiterate and perfect and test and reiterate. And you do that in a restaurant a little bit differently because you kind of do it with either your chef team, or you do it with the actual diners as a special, and then after it kind of lives on as a special, it becomes a permanent item. And so there's nuances to each, but I think the creative process and then the iteration process, they're somewhat similar. The only downside to footwear is you have to wait somewhere between 20 and 40 days every time you make a change. And so that kind of ability to make minor changes quickly and be nimble and is not very true. And so I think when you're a great shoe manufacturer, you make a shoe in about 2 years. It took us 5 years on our first one. It took us about two on our last. So we've learned how to kind of speed up the process. But that's I would say that's the big difference in the ideation.
I have to ask you this. How true to life is the food TV shows in the food world?
I think it depends on the show because I've only been on maybe I don't know 7 or 8 different cooking shows, and in my experience for all of them, there's so much reality. Like there's very much typically in my experience the best dish wins. The thing you don't think about is that they have to take a break in between you making the food and the chefs and the judges eating the food, and so if you made something with a lot of fat and that fat kind of coagulates and now that dish looks terrible, that can happen to you. And so I learned things like you have to kind of think ahead, like, oh, I'm going to make this dish. Will this dish hold for 30 to 50 minutes by the time they're done shooting it and taking a break and the judges are eating it? Because that takes a while in the TV world, right? And so that was one thing I learned that's a little bit different. And then I think the only thing that is also more of like a TV experience, like the food truck race, was by far the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, especially the All Star season, because you're competing against all winners and everyone was used to winning their season. So the level of competition was just 10x what it was the 10 years prior. But they put you through the ringer. And one thing I didn't realize, like it was our second season, we were about to win, and I knew we were way ahead of the other team, and so it's one on one. And they moved the other team's truck from their location, and hid the truck only so that I would drive by exactly where I knew they were and see that they weren't there, which eluded me to think that they were winning. So when I went up to go see if I won, I was in pure panic because I thought for sure I knew where their truck was and it wasn't there. And so now, and so that's, I think, that little bit of TV magic where everything happened exactly as it was, but they added a little spice, a little drama because they took that truck out of the picture. So I thought we lost. And then I found out we won, which was, all the more exciting and fun to watch on television. Yeah.
And I watched your season when it was on. Actually, I watched the
Yeah.
All Stars as well. How can people have as much fun as it looks like? And I know it's hard work too, but how can people add that excitement to when they're cooking at home?
Um, when I cook at home, there's a fine. My wife would say that there's a fine line between excitement and focus, and so it depends where I'm at and what I'm cooking because some things are more set and forget versus some things are more a la mano. But I would say you know for me it's theorizing something like so I don't like to make something twice. I'll do it if I know someone's coming over and they really love this one dish and it's not hard for me to make and I'll just make it. But for me, I think the exploratory nature of food and also like, you could be the best grill master in the world, but if you want to char that item and get the perfect marks on it and temp it exactly to like 3 or 4 degrees under so that it finishes cooking right when it's outside and when it's resting, like if you want to get to that level of perfection, you can't, right? Like, the best chefs in the world are still making sure that they do that every time correctly. And it's really only them who can lead that pack. And so I think getting into it, getting your teeth into it literally, and just really getting excited about trying to make it perfect. And by doing it better than the time you did it last, that to me is very motivating. And I think the challenge of food is you get 2 bell peppers, the sweetness is different. You get 2 cuts of chicken, there might be skin on this one versus the skin on this one's a little bit different. And so I think the challenge with making great food, yeah, it's easy to flavor things, but it's like cooking it perfectly, making sure it tastes good, making sure the textures are there. Like that to me is so fun.
I love this idea that you started out with the lime truck where you never made the same you couldn't make the same thing twice, so you didn't, and that it feels like that's still a through line for you.
It is,
Do
yeah,
you
very much so.
so normally I'd say what is your absolutely favorite dish, but maybe dish category is a better question?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about it. I think broth is a big one. When I'm cooking at home, my favorite thing to do is I love grilling. I mean, that's what the Yakitori restaurant's all about. And I think there's such an art to grilling. And there's, just like doing a thing like a saltwater brine on my corn. Someone would be like, "Why would you do 2 steps on the corn?" But when you do a saltwater brine on a corn and then you grill it, oh my god! And then you soak it a little bit after, and it gets that. There's just like a different level of texture, and part cooking certain things, or blanching a vegetable before you put it on the grill. And so I think there's an art to the grill that I really enjoy, and I feel like when we eat around the grill, it's always with friends and family, and it reminds me of like Sunday afternoon or vacation when we're in another state or on an island. And so I think that's my favorite thing to probably do at home.
I love how everybody always wants to make things, quicker, faster, more efficient, and it sounds to me that you like adding the extra steps because it makes a difference. Is that am I
Yeah,
did I get you? Have I
you're
figured you
totally
out?
right. I had this epiphany this past weekend when I had so we had a last minute impromptu. I just moved to a new home and we wanted to have some people over for a barbecue. And normally I kind of do a couple things in advance so that I'm not cooking when friends are over because you want to host and not just be cooking the whole time. And everything I do from scratch, so it takes a while to cook. And I realized in that moment when I was cooking is like I get as much. I don't want to say this because hopefully they won't watch this, but I get almost as much joy from cooking as I do with being with my guests and being with my friends. And so instead of rushing one experience so that I could host better, I was like, you know what? I'm doing exactly what I was supposed to do. And I'm making the most food. And this is my way of showing love to my friends and family. And it's also such a fun treat to have a Sunday where I don't have any responsibility and I'm just going to cook this meal as best as I possibly can. And that level of being present, it just feels so good for me.
I love it. Is there something you know now that you wish you knew before embarking on this wonderful career that's it has so many different elements to it.
I think what I probably would have loved to have told myself at an earlier stage was, and I learned this lesson multiple times, but it's maybe to have a little bit more intention with what I'm trying to build. I think in the beginning I was, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. Okay, I tried real estate and I hated it. I love food. Let me go try food. And then I tried food and it went really well. But it was always kind of more reactive in the sense of like I just wanted to do the next thing that felt right to me. And that's led me to have a lot of opportunities in my life because I'm so quick and I'm so proactive and I have initiative. But at the same time, I think it would have been balanced a little bit with a little bit more foresight. And so I would have loved to have kind of planned, and I'm doing that now. Luckily, over the last 5 years, I said, well, what's my ultimate goal in life? If I'm living the dream, which I really think I've been lucky enough to start doing, what does the dream look like? How many hours am I working a day? Who am I talking to? Where am I spending most of my time? And I think that focus, even though I couldn't have been able to do that day one, knowing that's where I wanted to go, I would have maybe done a few different kind of steps along the way. And so that intentionality, it's very meaningful for me. And I think that I would have loved to have been a little bit more intentional. And then the other part, which I say every day, is be present for what it is. I remember being inside Trader Joe's with samples from my food truck because we had no one at my food truck outside, getting kicked out because I wasn't allowed to be in there giving samples. And I remember being like, man, like I can't wait to like have the food truck be busy so I don't have to do this. I look back at that time as some of the most fun times of my life and like some of my proudest moments. And so, at the time I was trying to rush through it to get to the stage where I have the business I have today. But I look back at that and I'm like, that was some of the most fun I've ever had. So, you know,
It, it sounds like you put fun into everything. It's important because, and I say this a lot as well, when you love what you do, it shows. When you don't love what you do, it really shows. So why not
sure.
love what you do and send that out to the world? It probably tastes in the food, right?
Totally. And also, the food industry isn't specifically an industry that makes, crazy margins and tons of money. And so if you don't really love it, it's gonna wear on you really quickly. And to your point, you're gonna see it. You go into restaurants and you see the people who love hospitality and you feel their energy, and you see the people who are there just to get a paycheck, and then you see the people who are burnt out that don't have anywhere else to go. And those are vastly different, right? And you can feel the energy through the taste, through the experience, through the service. So yeah, I agree.
I have to ask, and this is completely off the subject, but not really. So the TV show The Bear, do you watch that? And how
I do. Yeah.
accurate is it to your life?
I don't live a bear life. I remember watching Carmi, the main character, and seeing what he was going through when I was opening my restaurant. And there was the moment where the tickets came out, and he was kind of had his whole panic attack. And I've had that exact moment in my life where all of a sudden we had 500 tickets, and it's me and three people, and two of them are new, and I'm like, this is going to be the worst service of my whole entire life. And so I think it's pretty good. I think it's pretty accurate. I actually talk a lot. So we just in Snibbs we did a whole brand guide. And do you remember the moment where cousin does his stage at the really nice restaurant in Chicago and he doesn't understand why he's cleaning the forks and he doesn't really get it, and then finally it clicks?
That was
Is
actually my favorite episode.
It was the best, right? And it
Right.
was also the calmest, I think, which was really nice too. So that moment embodies Snibbs. We talk about it as a company. We write about it. We treat Snibbs. But the cool thing about Snibbs is because we're hospitality people and making a hospitality brand, we actually treat our customers like we were a hospitality brand. And so I'm like, hey, whenever customers need something, we go above and beyond. We want to, if we know it's their first day of job, we check in, after and ask them how it was. Like the same thing you'd get in a nice restaurant. We need to do that in our business because we're giving hospitality to the folks who don't typically get hospitality. And I think that's that moment in when he realizes that in that episode. So true to our business. And so yes, in the culinary world, and I guess yes, in the business world.
Well, you definitely have that hospitality gene, and I love that it's translated into the shoe brand. What is next for you?
I mean, it's just gonna be more shoes on feet. We're doing some really special partnerships with the brand. One with Hedley and Bennett, another with favorite chef Nancy Silverton. And so these collaborations and working with these brands that like Hedley and Bennett, I've known the founder since I think her first 6 months in business, and I've been rooting for her. And she sets the standard, I think, for what great aprons can be in the industry and what building a community in the culinary industry can look like. And the idea of partnering with her on this company that I've been working on forever, like it just feels like a huge blessing. And Nancy Silverton has always been an idol. I love her restaurant, but she's the queen. She's got so much style and swagger and personality. And I just feel like being able to create a shoe with her, and the shoe is probably one of the coolest shoes I've ever seen. And so just doing these kind of fun projects that are creative and allow me to feel like I'm in the kitchen, but in the apparel and workwear space and the footwear space. That's what I'm really looking forward to. And so I still love my restaurants. I still love my food trucks. I'm still very involved, but I've been doing it for 15, almost 15 years. And so my two loves have always been food and fashion. And now I get to exercise both muscles. And so I'm just having a lot of fun doing it.
You could totally tell. Any final food for thought?
Any final food for thought? I think for your listeners, just food. It's like it's amazing, right? And so there's I think just enjoy it and love it. Like give it its your best. Like think about it. I mean, to me, the intentionality of food. Even if you're just serving food for your best friend, for your dog. I mean, we make food for our dog like once a week now, and I'm like really into it because I'm like, man, I love this dog and I love food, and so now I get to do both in a different way. And so just finding that joy within food, I guess.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Daniel, for joining me. I really enjoyed this conversation. Where can people learn more about you and your restaurants and the shoes? Of course, the shoes. The shoes.
Yeah, absolutely. So the website for the Snibbs is snibbs.co, no M. And then mine is just Daniel Shemtob. If you Google me, you'll find my website and Instagram, whatever that we use. And I'm always available on my website. There's a little button you can click and it will email me. And I love to help the community, and especially this community in LA and everything that I stand for. So just reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Daniel. And thank you for tuning in to Taste Buds with Deb. Don't miss an episode. You can subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, and or your favorite podcast platform. And you can go to jewishjournal.com/podcast to read the articles that go with each episode. And you can learn more at tastebudswithdeb.com. So be intentional. Put all that love into the food. Until next time, bon appetit.